once I started to lean into what it, I really had to get through this idea that somehow I was supposed to know how buying a business was even supposed to work. I felt, one of those dumb ideas that I should know how to do this, so I'm not really going to ask for any help. And then once I started to reach out and ask for help from, friends of mine who did this for a living, investment bankers who were close friends of mine, a lawyer, other confidants that I had who knew more about this. And I started to explore it as a reality. At that point, I started to evaluate, and again, because I wasn't 27 years old at that time, I was in my late 40s, I started to think about, well, is this something that I want to do? Should I do this on my own? Should I try to buy the business? Should I go try to work for someone else?
Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Welcome to The Decision, the podcast by EO Nashville, where we interview fellow EO Nashville members and talk about all the fun that we have starting, building, growing, scaling, and selling businesses. And with me, and my name's Eric Jackson, by the way. I never introduced myself. With me as usual, as always, Mr. Robert Hartline, my sidekick, my partner in crime. I've messed this up pretty good, didn't I?
We can always do it again.
Nah.
It's perfect. This is good enough. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not obsessed.
Yeah.
With us today, Mr. John Lavey. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we're, as we were describing earlier in our conversation, we're getting a little older. We're now beginning to be more concerned about our health, standing up on hard concrete at the pinnacle to see Dinosaur Jr.
That's
Those
right.
of you who don't know who they are, sorry, you're missing out. Tell me about, at this stage in your life, what's important to you?
Well, when it comes to going to a concert, they got to start earlier.
Yes.
They got to go on earlier. What's important to me at this time in my life is really how I'm spending my days, how I'm spending my time, who I'm spending my time with. That's more important than I was conscious of, I think, when I was younger. And certainly impacts how I think about what I do work-wise, how I spend my time outside of work as well.
So how do you discern?
Well, we were talking about it a little before we started here, but certainly has something to do with health and, all meanings of that, what that means. Healthy relationships, things I enjoy doing, which is a lot of healthy stuff, running, working out, mental health, spiritual health, probably not in that order, probably a different order, but yes, those things.
And I'm was unfortunately unable to watch you perform at the EO Talent Show. Talk a little bit about that part of your life.
Yeah, that's so I guess about 12 years ago, I started doing storytelling, primarily comic storytelling. I had hired a guy who had done this, and I went to see him perform. And it was a little bit after my dad had died. And I saw this guy, Chris, perform, and then I saw David Sedaris at the TPAC, and both of them were using humor as a way to navigate things that were difficult. And I thought that was interesting, and I might want to try it. So the format is pretty straightforward. It's about 10 minutes, a true story, and it's usually prompted. There's kind of a prompt, and so you tell a story, and I've told stories about parenting. I've told stories about, my own parents. I've told stories about just amusing anecdotes that at one time were painful, probably, and difficult, and now enough time has passed. The old Mark Twain, tragedy plus time equals comedy is kind of the stuff that I like doing. So I do it periodically, and I didn't know how how much fun I would have performing, being on stage and getting a laugh. If I were 22, I'd probably try to do stand up, but that ship sailed. That's the, there's you need to put in a lot of time to do that. So I'm doing that. And I just signed up for improv classes starting in August.
And with Third Coast?
Yes.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, so good.
I'm excited about that.
What's the framework that you use when you do your storytelling? Are you following a specific framework?
Well, so the one that I do is different from, say, the Moth. Some people would be familiar with the Moth, which is basically go up, you get your name drawn out of a hat at a bar, for example, and tell a story off the cuff. The ones that I do, they have a prompt. You submit something. It has to be true. It has to match the prompt. So it might be, I wish I hadn't said this. And then you go in and you write a true story about that. And for me, it's a great opportunity. What I've discovered particularly about comedy and telling jokes, is you can't manipulate someone into laughing. It's a sort of a shared idea of what truth is. So people laugh when this is something that we kind of agree on is funny in a way. And so what I find, it's a great way to explore things that have happened, a way to process things. And basically, if I can get to a place where I have enough distance from it and perspective on it to make a joke about it, then, I've kind of moved through something. So I like that as a way of both, catharsis therapy, as well as then getting up on stage and getting a joke is kind of intoxicating in its own way.
Yeah.
So what's your entrepreneurial story?
Yeah. So my entrepreneurial story may be a little different because I'm an EO with you guys, and there's certainly a lot of young people or younger than me. I'm a kind of late bloomer, business owner. I don't even know if entrepreneur is even the right word. I bought the business 3 years ago that I worked for more than 25 years, which I think is a little bit unique. Maybe it's not unique, but it's unique in among the circles that I'm kind of running in. So,
what was your role there before you purchased it?
Well, from the very beginning, I was a newspaper reporter when I first came to Nashville, and I was doing that until I went to work for Hammock, is the name of the company, and it's an agency that was started by 4 people who came out of an advertising agency here in Nashville, focused on, at that time, custom magazine publishing. And so they hired me as a writer and editor, and I worked there. I ended up going to business school at night and became more interested in the client service, account management part of things, business development, operations. So I became interested in more things, but I went there initially just to write and edit. And that's, at that time in my life, I kind of thought that's what I was going to be doing. A couple of the partners left the business when I had been there probably 7-8 years. And the founder and owner at that time entrusted me to kind of do more. And so I found myself, I guess I was like 35 years old and helping him run the business. So, and then that lasted until I bought the business from him, 15 years later or so.
Is that something that you had been thinking about for a while? Did you just have this feeling you were wanting to buy, or walk us through that decision? Actually, say yes to that.
It's a great question, and I think there had been an evolution in my own mind of how, my interest grew and grew in doing more in the business, and then the founder, Rex Hammock, who sadly passed away earlier this year, and I had talked about, particularly over the last 7-8 years that we worked together, me succeeding him in this business, buying the business. And we had sort of shockingly few conversations about what that meant, how that works. I don't think either one of us really knew how that worked. And so my interest grew in it. But I didn't even know really what it looked like to buy a business or to really to own a business. I was really an employee. I had a compensation agreement, but I didn't have any true ownership in the business until I bought it.
When that began to become real, what did that feel like, and what did you experience?
Well, a lot, because once I started to lean into what it, I really had to get through this idea that somehow I was supposed to know how buying a business was even supposed to work. I felt, one of those dumb ideas that I should know how to do this, so I'm not really going to ask for any help. And then once I started to reach out and ask for help from, friends of mine who did this for a living, investment bankers who are close friends of mine, a lawyer, other confidants that I had who knew more about this. And I started to explore it as a reality. At that point, I started to evaluate, and again, because I wasn't 27 years old at that time, I was in my late 40s. I started to think about, well, is this something that I want to do? Should I do this on my own? Should I try to buy the business? Should I go try to work for someone else? So I had these kind of paths that I was exploring, and discerning what that looked like was something that took me a little bit of time to go through and figure out for what was going to be right for me. Partly because I had been in the same company for a long time. And so I had to really kind of think about where I was in my life and what made sense. And I think, when I made it through that discernment process, this felt like buying the business felt like the most natural, logical it was the right decision in my view.
Did you decide how to lead before you became the leader? I mean, did you have a perspective like, I'm going to lead it like he did, or like, you know what, I'm going to have a new direction. This is my leadership style.
Well, it's interesting because I had been the president for a number of years, and I had an idea, I think maybe in my own head, that I was already kind of running the business, and owning the business was just going to be, I don't know, like the difference between living with your girlfriend and getting married. Like, you're just stepping into something. Actually, I found that to be more of an evolution than I would have imagined. And I think for me in this same way, there's just a different mentality. So as far as being a leader, I started, being entrusted with leadership at a younger age. And I think, like a lot of things that we do when we're younger, we grow into what it means to be a leader. And I think I had an idea of how a leader was supposed to act. And I think over time, what I've discovered is I have to be myself, and I have to learn how to be a better self, really, to be a better leader. I think so my idea of, as far as, I think I learned so much from Rex about a style of leadership that was different maybe than I saw. He was very respectful. He entrusted people to do things before they were probably ready to do them, and just kind of had confidence in you that maybe you didn't have in yourselves, which I found to be a really wonderful way to show leadership. And I think that was something that I learned from him. And the rest of it I learned through trial and error, probably like the rest of us,
How much do you feel like you lean on storytelling and leadership?
I think maybe that's a great question. And I don't know if I've ever been self-aware enough to think about it like that, but I think, yes, I think I do lean on storytelling. Number one, as I was talking about it before, as a way to be more authentic, or to try to be more authentic. Also, even just to sort of discern and understand what is the reality that's happening here, which I think is part of storytelling. Is like what's true, what's actually happening. And then the last part is I guess it's to try to persuade people, but it's also to give people a picture or a shared idea of what can be. And so I suppose in that way, on my best days, I'm a storyteller as a leader.
And that's part of your job.
Yes,
right, as a marketer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, we're in similar worlds, and it's my work in helping our clients tell their stories and understand how to understand what makes their story unique, and to have that. And again, I think any good story is less about me and more about some shared truth that the audience has or that the customer has. And so I think in that way, they're similar.
What sorts of mistakes do you see with the business owners that you work with when you first start talking to them and you're going down this path to find out what that story is? What sort of delusions do they have, and how do you kind of help them come back to home base?
Yeah. First of all, they have the same delusions that we all probably do, which I think is the value of doing work for someone else. Is you offer a perspective that, other people offer me a perspective I can't see about myself, and similarly for our clients. And I think that one of the main delusions that we can all have, and I see in the work that we do, is it's so funny that in our own lives we are so uncomfortable with how people are selling things to us and how people are trying to get us to do something. And we all instinctively know and get put off by how that works. And then in our lives, in our businesses, we turn to the customer and do the same things that we don't like done to us. Yeah. And it's just, and I think there's an aspect, I think there are certainly very gifted people who sort of overcome that. But I think on some level or another, we want to talk about ourselves. We want people to understand every last point that we want to make. We want people to hear every feature and advantage that we can provide. And I think we're just, and I think that's partly human nature and partly, so I think when it comes to clients and companies, there is usually a disconnect between what a customer needs or a customer cares about or what a customer thinks and what the client wants to talk about or tell them, or the story that they want to tell.
That's a great point. And I use this tale every now and then. What you have to understand is that every customer is listening to this radio station called WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Why should they give a damn?
Right.
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 And we, as a business owner, we're trying to sell the things that we've got. It's like, what do you actually need?
Right. Right.
And that's a hard pivot.
Yeah.
For somebody who's trying to make payroll and do
That's right.
And sell product. So continuing on the story theme, how did you get introduced to EO, and what made you realize that, this is the thing I need?
Yeah. So Jay Graves, who's the newly current EO president, is an old friend of mine. And when I bought the business, I got a call from him, and I had an idea when I got the call that he was going to talk to me about EO. And I was already prepped to sort of say, in a kind way, no, thank you. But he told me what it is about. And once I learned more about it, and even when I went to a session to learn more about it, it was different than what I thought it was. I thought it was more just like a networking group. And I didn't realize this idea of shared experience, shared support, both in how to be better in business, but also integrating in our lives, our relationships, our family lives, our parenting, and our own health. And so there was a lot more there than I realized. So I found myself talking to Jay on the phone, shaking my head, but saying yes. So, and once I got in there, I was, it's been an incredible experience for me to be a part of EO, be part of a forum. I don't honestly, I rely on EO so much for what we just talked about, leadership, good ideas, support, all of it.
Well, I remember visiting you at your office.
Yeah, for sure.
Ginger Jones and I were there to suss you out, make sure that you were legit.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that the John Lavey that's sitting in front of me today is a lot more confident and calm, I think, and ready for whatever's next than the guy I met a few years ago. Can you tell me how that has transpired?
Well, maybe because first I thought you were auditing me on some level, so there was that part of it. You were. That's right. I think it's just getting more comfortable with myself as a human being as I'm getting older, getting more comfortable with myself as a leader, getting more comfortable with myself. Just understanding that the job here is really to listen to people, to help them be more successful. It's not, it's less and less about me. So how I come across or, I worry less about that. And I think for all of us, it's a good thing. It's a good thing it's a good thing to get to the age where you just, first you think, worry about what people think of you. And then you get to an age where you're like, well, people don't really think about you that much at all.
Right. You walk into
everybody's kind of thinking about themselves, you know? So
you walk into a room and you think everybody's looking at you. Well, they're concerned about how they look and what everybody else thinks.
Yes.
And I think that's the beauty of getting older.
Yes, it is a beauty of getting older, and it's a good perspective to have.
Has there been a decision since leading the company now that you've had to navigate, either in your personal life or business?
Yeah,
you've had to navigate?
So many. I think probably the most relevant, one of the most relevant ones I can think about is just in my world. And I know from listening to other podcasts you've done with guests around agencies, for example, is what are we going to look like in the years to come? So I think it's been unpacking and repackaging what the idea of the work that we do looks like. I think it's a very much of a contractor's world. I think certainly big agencies can be very successful for a lot of people, but I think figuring out how to be the right specialized niche provider that really creates real value. I think most industries have been disintermediated by technologies then and now, all of us with AI, certainly. So understanding so I think for me, the decision of my thesis for what the business was going to be when I bought the business and where I think it's going now, I like to say this a little bit sometimes, is I felt like I bought a house in a really good neighborhood, but I didn't know at the time whether I needed to renovate the business or whether I was going to tear it down and rebuild something new. And it's been not a complete tear down, but it's been more renovation than I had maybe initially planned. So I think the decision into trying to do things differently and being confident enough, being honest and aware enough of what's going on to do that.
Do you think your ideal client has changed?
Yes, I do. Well, I think the ideal client hasn't changed. My understanding of who the ideal client has changed. I think I've gotten to understand that better over time of what that looks like. It's a little bigger than maybe we've done work for in the past. And in part because I think we're adding and we're working alongside other small agencies that provide services that are adjacent to what we do, but that they do, kind of well. And so best in breed and kind of being almost like a general contractor, bringing the best subcontractors to the table is really how we're working. I think it's a successful model for a lot of companies. I think it's a successful model for marketers and what they need. There's certainly room for, big companies needing big agencies. But for a lot of groups, I think getting best in breed providers of services is an intelligent way to work.
I've come to that same realization.
Yeah.
At some point, selfishly or just because of ego, I'm thinking we need to grow. We need more headcount. We need all these people. It's like, do we?
Yeah.
Do I really want to pay them to not do something?
Right.
And if you can find somebody and rent them and bring them in as an assassin to do something really special, well, gosh, you're a lot more agile. You can turn things on and turn them off when you need to.
I think that's right. And I think also it just, things keep evolving and changing, and the need for expertise and specialized knowledge just is too fast to just have someone, the needs just keep changing. And I think that needing, to serve clients the best, I think honestly is just, bringing the best craftsperson to the table for that.
Because one photographer can shoot anything.
Yeah.
But they may not be the best for that particular client.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of the best creators don't want to work full time for someone. They want to work for themselves. So for me to bring the best people to the table, we used to joke about the best developers wanted to snowboard 150 days a year. They don't want to work for you, and they certainly don't want to work for your client. So, you have to sort of adjust to what people want to do, how they want to live their lives, where they want to spend their time working. And I think being able to sort of navigate that reality in my world is important. And at the same time, being able to and experienced in managing teams across that reality.
Has your why changed much since being a president in the company to owning the company? Have you just spent any time with discovering what the why it looks like?
Great question. And I think I don't even know I think that's almost a bigger question for me around who I am as a human being as much as it is about business. The why has grown from, I want to be successful to grow this thing so that it's economically, growing, and that creates some sort of esteem. And I think my why is different now, and it's more about meaning in my life and doing great work, working with people I want to work with. So I think the why has changed in that respect. And I think that's maybe a function of change in role, but I think it's a function of just, this thing, losing my hair and growing up and,
Robert, I'm going to steal one of your go-to questions here. You've been an EO for 3 years now. You've experienced 2 years.
Yeah. A little bit more than 2.
I'm not good with time.
Yeah.
Tell us, you were to speak to somebody who was just joining EO.
Yeah.
What would you encourage them to do? What's the success path?
In EO, once you've joined, I think it's to really, and I think the part that surprised me is how quickly people were willing to get real and how willing they were to open up about their business. And I found that to be incredibly appealing, and created a space that made it possible to be honest and really just get more done and be more, we have this way of doing things that requires us to get in these 5% where we really think about the things that matter the most in work and life. And I think that's an incredibly good challenge. So I think the first thing I'd say is just, be willing to do what is suggested and be vulnerable. And I think then getting involved, I joined the committee. Now I'm on the board, and now I'm finding myself on just a flurry of meetings throughout the week, here, there, and everywhere. And I don't know if that, but I think EO's given so much to me on some level. I just feel, honored, obligated to try to do whatever I can to provide and give back, because it's just been great.
That's how cults work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
We set the hook. And it just reminded me, we were on a membership committee call the other day.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I was the guy who came out and visited with John. And now he's deeper into the cult with me.
That's
I
right.
love this.
That's right. I know. And I wasn't a big joiner, or I didn't think of myself as a big joiner. And now I'm kind of all in. I was a little cynical about EO, honestly, or a little cynical about, we're going to be thrown into this group with people and we're going to get really open and honest. Maybe.
Really?
Yeah. Do we really want to do that? Does that feel good? And it was amazing how quickly it felt very natural, and just how meaningful the relationships within my forum and then growing beyond that have become. Yeah. And it's been instrumental for me to sort of understand there's so much wisdom, and on some level it's intimidating because they're just people that are doing things like that you're just saying, man, I wish I was doing that in my business. And so there's an aspirational quality to it to constantly see ways to do things better.
Yeah, something I've noticed is because you're spending more time with people like us, other entrepreneurs, we're spending time with them. And before EO for me, I didn't have a lot of time with my ideal prospects, because I was selling to other business owners, but I didn't have a lot of time with them outside of trying to sell them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And now like when you actually get to know people that are doing the like things, you really get better at selling when it comes to actually a real prospect, because you know how to talk to someone like you, because it's peer to peer. It's a different experience than, it's just like an evolution, I think, of just, being with other peers and getting to know them.
Yeah.
Of those peers that are driven, that are, they're motivated. They're doing things and moving forward. Whereas before, it didn't have a lot of that experience hanging out with people that were like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Reminds me, I have this conversation with prospects, and I like to go straight to the end of the story. Is that, hey, if I can't discover what success means to you and achieve that, I know I'm getting fired.
Right.
And they're like, I've never heard it described like that before. It's like,
Right.
yeah, well, I've been around this for long enough that I understand how all this works. So why not? Let's just get this out in the open.
Right.
And I think the same thing is true with EO. Like we've brought people in who we really didn't understand what they were trying to achieve. And I think that's part of the beauty of our membership process is we're trying to get that out of them. And those questions that we went through the other day, and that has evolved over the years. Why do you want to be a part of EO? And we dig deeper than that, but it really gets to, is this what you want to do? Because we don't want to bring people on if they're just going to leave after a year.
Right. Right. And, it is very much what you get out of it is what you put into it. And if you're
That's
not
true.
and it's like our businesses, if you don't have skin in the game, you're not. And I think, and I think from a sales perspective or a participating in EO perspective, a lot of, and I think leadership is a lot of it. It's just becoming more and more comfortable in your own skin, being willing to sort of hold space for someone else. I think great selling is listening. And
Yeah,
I
if you
think,
can get a prospect to go vulnerable with you,
yeah,
Right.
man, you've got it. There's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially when you relate to it.
Yeah. Well, you talked about improv, and one of the main reasons I want to do it is because I like being on stage and making people laugh. But one of the other reasons I wanted to do it is the discipline of improv, of you give me information and I'm not waiting to sort of talk. I'm having to be fully present for what you're presenting me and the reality that you're presenting me. So it's like holding space for people. My wife would say it's not my strong suit.
Dude,
so I'm learning how to do that.
Being present is a practice that it takes a lot of practice to get good at.
Yeah.
For sure. Some of the most transformation I've ever had was taking Third Coast Comedy. I brought my leadership team to do it. And talk about really getting uncomfortable, because the whole time in improv, you're not comfortable.
No.
It's very uncomfortable.
Right.
And you realize how much you're stuck in your head. And comedy happens when you're not in your head.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about what you're going to say. It just, what you say, whatever comes out of your mouth.
Right.
But
Which creates these happy accidents, which is the point of it. It's a creative exercise.
we need to do a My EO improv class. I bet they could do that for us. Like to do a whole just with EO members.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I like that.
That'd be fun.
So what are you looking for in the next 10 years? What does John's life look like, either personally or business, that you'd like to bring to light?
I think grow a business that does great work for clients. Continue to understand what being successful in what I think is another, new revolution and reality with AI, which I think of as like a talking about this the other day. Iron Man, the movie, Tony Stark, is very capable in his own right, and then puts this suit on and becomes this superhero. That's different than being a robot. And I think AI used appropriately is like that Iron Man suit. And so I think that's one of the things I'm trying to figure out, how to use these tools of technology to enhance, experience and hopefully wisdom that's been built over a period of time to make a business better. We were talking about it before around, health, staying physically healthy and growing spiritually, growing in relationships. I've got 2 adult daughters. I've got a wife I've been married to for 30 years, and maybe even hopefully spend a little time relaxing and traveling and doing stuff like that too. So,
John, thanks for joining.
And producing more comedy and doing more comedy. Yeah, I want to do more comedy stuff. I really
You're great
enjoy
at
that.
storytelling. It was a great story you told.
Appreciate it.
And that story is on our YouTube channel.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is it? Well, now I have
part
no
of the.
excuse for
I'll
not
have to go
watching
watch it.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's there. If it's not, it will be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
If you are an entrepreneur right here in Nashville, Tennessee, and you're looking to belong, you can visit eonashville.com and learn how 350 other driven entrepreneurs gather every single month in what we call a forum experience and grow together, making powerful decisions for our lives and our businesses. If you're interested, please visit eonashville.com. Thanks for watching and hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.